A woman that grew up in La Crosse but moved to California a few years ago is back in her hometown and sharing a bone-chilling story. Leigh Collins survived an attack and an attempted sexual assault by someone that was unknowingly stalking her for years.
Well, I sat up in bed, looked at my phone, and it was 3:04 a.m. And I looked up from my phone at the bedroom doorway, and there was a silhouette of a figure standing in my bedroom doorway.
19 News' Danny Smith sat down with Leigh to learn more about her fight to survive and how she's using that traumatic experience and the recovery to help others. Now, we want to warn you, some of what you're about to hear and see might be disturbing, and it includes discussions about sexual assault.
Leigh, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to start off with that night. Obviously a really scary story. You were in your bed, and then what happened?
I was in my bed, my dog was barking, and I woke up, checked my apartment, and there was a man in my apartment with a knife. He held me at knife point, and it became clear that he was going to rape me. And I decided to fight back, and I won in the fight, ended up chasing him out of my apartment that night. And from there, my whole life has changed.
And you were significantly injured in this. Can you tell me a little bit just about that?
I was stabbed 7 times, twice in the head, and then once right here, once right here, once right here, and then these 2 fingers were mostly severed, I would say. But the doctors were able to reattach these, thankfully, but they're non-functioning now.
And who was this person? Any kind of criminal past? Did you know this person?
I didn't know him. I didn't recognize him. I came to find out through the trial, and someone wrote in a letter to the DA's office in LA that knew him, that he had admitted that he had been watching me for quite some time.
You hadn't really practiced any self-defense prior to this attack. What changed afterwards?
So for me, it was definitely something that made me feel a lot safer to know how to attack. So I box now. I love to box. I think as women, we're so often depicted in media as being ferocious to protect our children and the people we love, but we have a right to be ferocious to also protect ourselves. So that's something that I think just is a mental practice that I try to do since the attack.
Obviously, Los Angeles and California, completely different than your hometown of La Crosse, but that doesn't mean that the risk isn't here as well. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. I think for women everywhere, my best advice is to do those things to practice in your mind, not all the time, because that's, you'll go crazy if you do that. But practice in your mind what you're willing to do if you have to defend yourself, and I would say not just defend yourself, but attack on your own behalf. If someone is violent with you, they've already crossed that line. If they've entered your home, they've already crossed that line.
It's so brave of you to come and share your story. So why do you do it, and why are you kind of reliving that night?
That's a great question. I think in the months and years after the attack, it was surprising to me how lonely it felt to be someone that this happened to. I had obviously my family. I have a big family in La Crosse, and friends and people that were willing to help out. But to be someone that lived through something like this, there's just not a lot of depictions out there of what it's like, not just the night of, but the aftermath and what that does to a person and how to live through what happens to you mentally, emotionally, relationally after something like that.
Absolutely. And stalking and vicious attacks like yours are definitely not something we're hearing about all the time. So I really want to thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
And again, we want to thank Leigh for sharing the story with us. Her attacker was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes. Leigh says she's come a long way since her attack, and she'll soon release a book about that journey.